after, as I said, I was being groomed as a MIT, minister in training, and I attended a campground. Later in 1974, I performed one of my first vocal prophecies and said I would reunite myself with my family, and I would find them. And people thought I was nuts at that time. Nobody knew where Mom had gone, and or my stepfather, let alone why we would want to return. And stood up prior to the end of the year, and I said I found my mother and found my father, or it was actually my stepfather, and that they were living in Regina, and I would go visit them. And by Christmas that year, I was on a bus and heading to Regina, and where I was reunited with the family. But what I came to do, I never actually did, because this family is so dysfunctional and rooted in dysfunctionism. I had hoped to bring everybody together in one place, one accord, and where families fought together and children grew up not knowing their father and stuff like this, and left behind a loved one, and to this day I kind of half still kick myself in Tanya, who became my first wife, had to measure against her footsteps, and I'm not naming the person, but they know who I'm talking about. And that person got married and had children of their own. Went through a bit of rough life, but she clings to God, and I think her ultimate testimony is she had the marriage that survived, and I kind of trashed mine. There are many reasons, but I had a whole lot of learning to do, and a whole lot of humbling to do, and a whole lot of arrogance to get rid of. But God had His hand on the steering wheel. Over the years, I stumbled over different things because I would see the Bible differently, and not necessarily agree along with most of what I had understood and what was being taught as Christian doctrine. I would say strange things, and I kept kosher, and although I didn't call it being kosher at the time, and kept Shabbat and Sabbath, taught it within Sunday school realms, and often got in trouble and kicked out and misrepresented, but it stood there and about the law and defended the law even back there. It wouldn't be a year till years later, when I was going through a turmoil, and I was in another group here called Healing Hearts, and because of my household condition and situation, pastors tried to put me under subjective authority, and I had a dream, and I was to go to Vancouver. I was going to go to BC, and the two pastors got together and said, "You are not going to go. You got to stay here. You got to answer to us." And I remember looking at them, and I said the words, "Pastors, understand this. I love you in the Lord, and I understand your position. But I'm going to tell you something about this boy. You're going to understand real quick. I'll answer to 1 million angry pastors any day, any year, any month, in any given moment, before I will answer to one angry God, and I'm going to go." And I found myself on the bus and heading into British Columbia. In 5 days, in a little tent community called what they call that, near Boston Bar, Tranquility Station. And the other 5 days were spent in Chilliwack, British Columbia, at a place called The Bridge. And we saw God move in a miraculous way. But it was the very first time that I came into physical contact with Messianics. And they came looking for me. And laid things out. But they didn't quite convince me. I'm going like, that's fine and dandy, but I'm Scotch Irish, I'm not Jewish, and God bless you, but on the bus home, I got troubled, and wherever I went amongst the First Nations, whether it was amongst the Cree or Dene or the Sioux or the Saulteaux, or wherever God let me to go, I became very tantamount with very many nationalities and very quickly congregations, and I could blend real quick and adapt real quick because I found some of these people within my family later on, but at the same time, you know, they didn't see an arrogant part of me because I didn't go there with the idea that I had the whole truth and nothing but the truth. I went there to learn about them, about the culture, about their beliefs, the way they taught, the way they thought, and so it became a very interesting moment because we exchanged ideas. And so I learned just as much, and I got thinking the way back, well, the door's going to open for me at the very least. I'm going to be ministering to the Jews, and if I'm going to be amongst the Jews are God's people, and if I'm going to go into God's people, I better, I mean, if I've gone through this much to find out and understand, and so I can communicate and win the respect of a Sioux, or a Cree, or a Dene, I bloody well better do my homework on Judaism, because the last person I really wanted to offend would be God's people. And I went and I prayed and said, God, I need a crash test. I need Judaism 101, and I need it like yesterday. And I had a friend in Regina. His name was Dave Abbey, and we used to work in the government together, and I tracked him down and I said, Dave, my friend, you're Jewish. I need a crash course on what it is to be Jew. The guy looked at me and he said the words, I may be Jewish by family and heritage, but I know nothing about my faith. I'm sorry. I can't tell you. Well, that poor man. I went off on him. I preached at him for I think about 2.5, 3 hours, and I didn't let go. I think it would be 2 weeks later, I run into him again, and he walked up and he shook my hand and he said, thank you, Daniel. And I said, for what? He said, for saying what you said. And I said, oh, Dave, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to go off on you the way you are. You're my friend, and I love you just the way you have such a sweet spirit about you. He said, no, you don't understand. He said, everything you said to me went into my heart, and I should know what it means to be Jewish, not just by namesake, but I should know about the faith and about my God. You're right. And so he restored himself to the synagogue here in Regina. I later would share this with his brothers, and they go like, how dare you, you should have converted him to Jesus, you should convert him to God. And I go like, but I did. I sent him back to his synagogue. I returned him to his God. And I didn't back there consider that the Jewish God was any different than this Jesus, as I called him back then, that I served. And that therefore, if Jesus was Jewish, Judaism became valid to me. And I refused to become part of the substantiation and substitution doctrines, and took a very bold stand even at that moment for stirring up. But I still needed to understand what it meant to be Jew, because if I was going to go talk to them, I would have to know how to communicate to them without offending them. And I understood that. And I said, I need a crash course. And I got a job working for Harvard Towers as one of the day porters. And in the summertime, we'd wander in our breaks out in the sunshine and get good fresh air and lots of sunshine and get a bit of a tan. And I wandered through this, what was called the Scar Street Mall, and there was a bookstore. And I wandered into the bookstore, and browsing around, they just opened this bookstore to all the books. And there on the shelf was this one, and it said Judaism for Dummies. Now I had taken the Computers for Dummies and DOS for Dummies and Windows for Dummies, and I know it had helped me a lot today in my computer skills. I thought, here's the answer to my prayer. If there's a For Dummies book, I'm going to learn what it means to be I'm Jewish. And I picked it up and read. In the first chapter, I got thrown into confusion. Because I realized that, and I went to talk to rabbis about this, 9 out of 10 things that I taught in Christian churches was more prominent in the Jewish world than it is in the Christian world. And when they talked to me and asked me some questions, they pointed out that out of those 9 out of 10 things, 7 out of 10 were more prominent Messianic than they were Jewish. And it threw me into an identity crisis, because I had had so many lies from my mother, who said we were just Scotch-Irish white people and that's all there was in our family. And I found people that were married to Jamaicans, so I had Jamaicans. There was a Filipino lady who married one of my uncles. They're natives. I have Sioux, I have Cree, I have Dene in my family. And so all the lies of my mother had already scrambled me up enough, and here was one more in an area that, I'm thinking more a line of being Jewish and talking more like I'm Jewish and teaching more like I'm Jewish than I am a Christian. And I didn't know who I was. I said, who am I? What am I? And I didn't know. And one rabbi looked at me and says, why are you so confused? I said, because how do I know this stuff? And he says, who teaches you? But the Ruach HaKodesh. And I said, what's the Ruach HaKodesh? He said, the Holy Spirit, the one you call the Holy Spirit. Who teaches you? What is that all about? And I said, well, God. And he says, who's this God? And I said, he's Jewish. And he says, exactly. You think he's going to teach you something different when he's Jewish than how to be Jew? And it made sense. One of my friends said, well, you're not going to convert. And I looked at my friend and I said, you understand it. I will always be true to me, no matter what. No matter where I go in life, this is me. This is an extension of me. This is stuff I've believed since I first came to light. And I didn't necessarily see it, and I didn't always understand it, and I tried to struggle with it and connect, and suddenly things start connecting and making sense. And that's how I became Messianic. They weren't content to let me be Messianic. They said, what school do you want to belong to? And I went, what are you talking about now? And they said, well, you should be, a Nazarene or Sacred Name or something. You can't just be Messianic. I said, oi! My first Jewish expression. Oi! What? I've been through this fight already with Christians. Why can't I just be a follower of the Messiah? Why do I have to be a Baptist or Pentecostal or and you're doing this to me too now? And he explained, he said, no, you don't understand. It's a commonality. It's an area that you'd be supportive and be able to hold your dreams. Again, this is the third one, and I'm going through it really faster, and I've gone through another 15-minute segment. So, I guess this means there's going to be part 4, so see you back in a couple minutes. Shalom.